He has also participated in several technology enhanced education initiatives at the national level. So, for example, he has been taking part in NPTEL as well as a Switzerland-based online MBA school called Educatis, IIITB's educational outreach program with Upgrad. He has been on various technical and organizational committees at national level as well as at international level. So many accolades to his credit. He has also been a recipient of funding from national and international grants, commissions, EU Horizon 2020, UK Royal Academy of Engineering, Research Councils, UK, DST, Siemens, Intes, Emphasis, EMC, Guru, whatnot. I'm indeed happy to welcome you, sir, on this panel today. And with this very dazzling panelists with us today, let us start with our session. So first of all, I will request all of them one by one to give their opening remarks. And then again, I will go for a second round in which they can elaborate their views on today's topic. So first of all, let me invite Mr. Sivaramakrishnan Viswanathan to express his opening remarks, please. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Dr. Suhasini. My very hearty congratulations to the entire team to have put up this conclave. It's very relevant in today's context. I would kind of open this open this session with a positive remark that India is arriving in the area of research and development. We all know that while the new strain worldwide, the COVID strain is causing a lot of stress for all of us, we have 2 vaccines developed by India indigenously and being rolled out. What a way to start, this conclave in the time where the entire world is going through a traumatic phase in terms of, this pandemic. But already the Indian research fraternity has put together a fantastic solution to this problem, and we hope to see better times. India, Make in India is happening, and innovating in India is also happening. And I think the next era is going to be for India, and I'm pretty sure with these kind of exchange of knowledge and information, we are going to go places as a country. So this I think sets the kind of my initial thoughts on where India is in terms of research. From a capability standpoint, I would really say that India has got all the wherewithal to compete in the global, innovation environment. Definitely, I have no doubts. Being in the industry for over 3 decades now, I can assure each one of you in this forum that India has all the capability. Of course, we need to channelize the resources. A lot of things needs to be done in that area to channelize these resources to bring about the desired results. If you look at the overall, the research scenario, we spend about 1% of our total GDP in R&D spend, while countries like China spends nearly twice that of it, and Japan spends nearly thrice that of that spend. Even a country, if you look at the BRIC countries like Brazil, Russia, the other 2 main competitors in an economic standpoint, they also do better than India. So that said, I think the future is very, very bright in the area of research. So I do not see any reason why we as a country cannot succeed in this area and to be world leader in terms of innovation.
Okay.
So that's my opening remarks. I will request
Thank
others
you. Yeah. Thank you very, very much, sir, because this has been most, first of all, we start on a very positive note that India holds a very bright future in R&D development. And maybe there are many obstacles as we go through more deep in this webinar. We will be talking more about it. What are the challenges and how do we overcome them? And what should be role of private, public sector, private sector, academia, etc. But first of all, we are starting on a very positive note that India holds a very bright future in developing robust, world-known R&D in India. Thank you so much, sir. So let me now go to Usha, madam, Dr. Usha Manjunath. Please, your opening remarks, please. Thank you.
Yeah, good morning, everyone. And it's a pleasure. And thank you for the introduction, though I think it was much more than what probably, I am and I do, but thank you very much on that. And I thank, the organizers for this opportunity. Taking from where, Sivaramakrishnan left, one is on the positive note, really that, how we move ahead. And what I would like to say is in terms of opportunities for R&D, for example, the opportunity is galore. I mean, it is everywhere, whether you want to look at healthcare, environment, manufacturing, access to goods and services, and reaching the unreached. So, the way to really look at, research as well as in terms of the development further. So I kind of put it a little differently for healthcare, which is where I come from.
Yeah.
And so if we really look at the research and development that we require, is also in terms of, the health system research, in terms of, our ability to reach out to the, large population, universal health coverage, or as, there are different kinds of research that are required in that area. And of course, I think we have, another point is in terms of pharmaceuticals and medical devices.
Yeah.
I think we are doing very well in that area. We are very proud as we sit here, whether it is in the, present scenario of COVID, moving ahead with the vaccines that we have already started, giving to people from 16th January. Whether it is in, miniaturizing and small medical devices, I think there is a very positive note. Even though, our R&D for has certain limitation in pharma, but I think it is a very, very, bright sector for us. Say whether it is in from biotechnology point of view and moving ahead, we have a lot of capacity built up in that. We have a lot of companies across, and there is a lot of interest across, and I think that has been a very positive one for us. Now moving ahead in healthcare, if we really see, the next main thing that's going to happen is on the digital health. So that is where I think we have capacities, whether it is through the R&D part, whether it is in terms of delivery, startups, make in India. I think we have it all. Sitting in Bangalore, I mean, if we really see, across India, if we had general startup, not healthcare only, but if we have 197, 86 are from Bangalore. So the ecosystem is also built, and those kinds of ecosystems have to happen in, based on the sector wise, maybe the cluster wise, and so on. Where we probably require a lot more push and need is on medical equipment. That is where we still are dependent on a lot of the medical equipment, importing and others. And that's where I think we probably have to really look at. But then of course, R&D and innovations are very much alive. Last 20 years plus, government, educational institutions have really started the movement, I mean, to improve the situation. And there are about 1.3 million engineers passing out. I think we need to really get that going. And 35,000 doctors. There are passing out every year. And we definitely have, capacity to train other allied health people, technicians, and all that. And I think we have to build a little bit more strong culture, and the opportunities are coming up. And I think the recent move for really making it more Make in India and Startup India and so on would really give a fillip to R&D, healthcare or otherwise. And I think COVID has opened up our minds, opportunities. We saw how, many sectors and, small players, whether it was ventilators, whether it was many other, drugs and others, how the things really happened in a short time. And I think, taking it up on a mission mode, I think we should be able to really do better. Definitely, yes.
Thank you so much, madam. Actually, healthcare sector was not paid much attention to, say, 20 years back or whatever. So in the recent times, it has really been in a boom, and at every level, at the smallest small cottage industry to the large giants in pharmaceuticals and medical equipment, healthcare industry has picked up, and it has got a lot of social backing, I will say, and that is going to help it in the future. We'll talk more about this because, as you said, medical equipments, regulations, and the reliability engineering that has to go into medical equipments and etc. We'll have to talk more about it while developing R&D in India. Thank you so much, madam. I move on to our third speaker today, Dr. Srinath Srinivasan, sir. And sir, your opening remarks, please. Yeah.
So thank you, madam, and thanks for this. It's really an honor to be on this panel, and I would like to congratulate all the organizers for this very timely and very important event, I would say. And for my remarks, I would just sustainability is something which I'm very interested in as an abstract concept in itself. And I would like to make a small caption, which I would like to expand on as well. What I'd like to say is that what sustains the society also sustains the science. And so that's the main theme that I'd like to talk about. The second point that I'd like to mention is the importance of interdisciplinarity in approaching sustainability of society. So if we just look at the inflection points in scientific advancement worldwide, right, over the last couple of centuries, we see two primary inflection points, right? One is about maybe 200 years ago in Europe with the start of the Industrial Revolution. So we had one major inflection point, and the second was in the previous century during the Cold War and something where US was leading the scientific arena worldwide, right? And where we saw the development of the information age, what we see. Okay. But if we look at both of them, we see some very common patterns between all of them. Okay. One, Newtonian science, right? Newtonian physics, which characterized European physics today, actually predated the Industrial Revolution by almost 200 years itself. It lay dormant for a lot of time, and suddenly it picked up. Suddenly the demand from technology, right? So basically, technological demand drives scientific progress. So that's the first point I'd like to make. The same thing is true in the information age as well. Charles Babbage, one of the first pioneers of the computing machine, predated the computers by more than a century, right? And the ideas remained dormant for a long time, and suddenly the technological demand spurred the science. And what spurred the technological demand itself? So if you see, the technological demand was in turn spurred by social demands. So the industrial age was characterized by expansionist demand from European society at that time. The colonial expansion was happening, and for whatever reasons, there are a lot of expansionist demands, and that was the driving characteristic behind the technology. And if you look at the information age, what happened is the primary demand from the society was retention of control. If you see, for example, the development of the internet itself. The internet was developed as part of a DARPA grant, whose objectives was how do we maintain communication infrastructure in the face of a nuclear attack. So that was so the primary demand from there was, how do we sustain, or how do we sustain our communications? How do we maintain control over our country and so on in the face of the threat that? So there was a dominant social demand, which in turn drove the technological demand, and which in turn drove the science actually, and which had a lot of. So the point I'd like to make is, do we understand, for example, what are the demands from India? What are the social demands from India? What is it asking for, right? And so we have tried lots of, I'm sure there are lots of efforts, there are lots of people working towards that. In the early 2000s, when I was seeing, some of them talking about how to address Indian demands, and they were looking at stereotypes. I mean, maybe Indians are looking for online horoscopes. Maybe Indians are looking for matchmaking, which is fine, but these are not really demands, right? And what has really picked up is, if you see, we are now one of the world leaders in 4G technologies. We are now one of the world leaders in the use of social media, WhatsApp, and so on, mobile wallets, and so basically, the society is actually speaking to us, right? It's telling, some of the demands that I see are, it's asking for livelihood. Okay, so livelihood is a major demand. So coming from all sections of the society. For example, if you look at the current farmer protests as well, those who are arguing against and arguing for the agriculture bill are both arguing for their livelihoods actually. And so are we able to understand the underlying livelihood as the problem, right? And second, there are we are a very diverse country, so there are several social groups and cultural groups and so on. And there's this kind of trust issues or trust algebra, right? And so do we understand, for example, can we develop a trust science? That's something that very interdisciplinary science of how do we build trust, right, across. And somebody may be, I may be, somebody may not trust me as a person, but they may trust my work, right? Or somebody may trust me as a person, but they may not trust the cultural group that I affiliate with, or so on, right? And so there's a lot of ifs and buts over there, and these are very nice research problems, very interdisciplinary research problems that can bring together people from different walks of life. And if we can look in these areas, I think we can really provide some very, very vibrant science and sustainable science. So that would be.
Thank you so much, sir. I think the way you explained how the social needs and society aspiration drives the technology and innovation. And as you very aptly said, growth is never linear. Growth is very complex phenomena. So the Western world, which was always thinking that, okay, India is yet to enter into technology and rural India and all these things. So they may not, but this country has been so diverse. Even our growth is diverse, and that is how, with that diversity, we are going to, we compete the world, and maybe we will conquer the world with our R&D also in coming future, because a lot of democratization of the technology is going to help our country. So let us go a little ahead with this. I'm very fortunate that all the three speakers today come from very diverse backgrounds. One is a very attractive healthcare industry, and we also have an expert from manufacturing. So can I go back and take the second round where you can elaborate your take on R&D development in India, its issues, and how do we go ahead, whether it is in manufacturing industry, health industry, IT industry, or even the retail industry in India. How do we go ahead? What are the challenges? And how the private industry is reacting towards the initiatives by our government of India. So can I go back to you once again? And I request Mr. Sivaramakrishnan again to elaborate his point and uh, explain us the view on manufacturing industry R&D. Please.
Thank you. I think very impressive opening remarks by Dr. Srinath. In fact, so it reminds me necessity is mother of invention, and he very nicely, how the social demands, which are fundamentally the necessities of the society, which drives innovation in a country or in a society. So, and again, I drive this same very point back. Manufacturing industry in India has arrived with the Make in India program. 2 decades ago, when the Indian economy was opened up, we saw a host of foreign multinationals setting up their manufacturing shops here. All the brands of, at least when I speak of automotive industry, you can see every other car brand and automobile component brands are available in India as a manufacturing base. So that was the first, I would say, revolution which happened, and then we saw the next wave of growth, which is the R&D setup. If you closely look at, while many companies are actually shutting their manufacturing shops in India, you will find that they are opening up their R&D centers in India.
Yeah.
So you will find many multinational companies do not do any more manufacturing here, but they continue to have their R&Ds in India, which clearly points out that the talent pool is available in India. And these multinationals has recognized that this large English-speaking engineering population of educated engineers and researchers is a big talent pool to tap and benefit business. Having said that, from a Indian corporate standpoint, I have personally gone through this revolution. When I started my career, an R&D center was a 4-member team in my first company.
Yeah.
Right? There weren't more than 4 people. And today, when I look back, you see large R&D spends by the Indian corporates, having recognized the importance of R&D in business. And the more so always in the Indian business houses, or the way Indian business was conducted, it was always the assets which were respected, physical assets which were respected, and the return on investment, return on capital expenditure. So the financial experts used to work overtime on every penny spent on trying to find out how the return on investments are or paying back the business. But I strongly believe that days are gone, and now the intellectual asset, the intellectual property has gained prominence in the Indian businesses. Very classic example is, if you look at the number of patents which are being filed by the Indian business houses, has steadily been increasing, and it is not a linear progression, but it is exponentially increasing. That's an important piece of information which we must take to. This very clearly says that there is as Dr. Srinath said, so how the societal demand. So if we look at manufacturing industry as a society, you can see that there is a latent need that R&D both on the basic research and applied research is a very important piece for the success of manufacturing industry in India. And definitely this cannot be alone achieved by the manufacturing industries. It has to be through partnerships. Partnerships with research institutes, be it a government research institute or through academic institutions, of repute or otherwise. because that is where the knowledge exchange happens. While manufacturing industry largely, even today, having, despite the renewed focus on research and development, still, they are highly number focused. At the end of the day, everyone working in this industry has a responsibility to address the stakeholders, you have to churn out those numbers. So while research, so you have large proportion of your mind space occupied on today, you need a constant focus on the tomorrow and the future. And so research and development in any manufacturing organization thinks of the today, or the tomorrow and the future. And even more, kind of a program which takes you more deeper into the future is an industry academia partnership, where you can work on multidisciplinary. And another aspect which I was quite impressed with Dr. Srinath's remarks were the need for multidisciplinary approach. Like I come from an automotive background, more into a polymer science and mechanical engineering background. But the amount of electronics today which we try and explore is unimaginable. And if I have to recruit a team of electronics engineer here, they become kind of professional orphans in an R&D environment, where you have a lot of polymer scientists and mechanical engineers. A team of electronics engineers feel out of place, because they don't feel they belong to this industry. But there is so much of electronics involved research which is required for our field. So we struggle in this area. So the role of academic industry academia partnership is very much required, especially in the area of research programs which require multidisciplinary approach. This I think is one of the core needs. This round, I leave this thought for us to mull over and build the thoughts.
Yes. Can we say that today's infrastructure for R&D is enough, or we should have more of that in manufacturing industry?
Very, very, very interesting question. In fact, one of the most pertinent questions. I thought I would address it going further, but since this question has come up, I will try and address it. Definitely, when we compare the developed economies versus the Indian economy, we are far, far short in terms of R&D infrastructure. Let me give you an example as to why I say that. As you know, India is one of the largest automobile manufacturers. India is the largest two-wheeler manufacturer in the world, and one of the largest, I think, fifth in the world. And as latest as even today, it's still under construction. A test track, which is National Automotive Testing and Research Association or whatever. So a government-funded track started sometime in 2000, and it's nearly 2 decades, and still we are trying to figure out as to what we need to do as a country. This is not a complaint or anything, but I guess many of the industries are going through the struggle phase when it comes to large infrastructure. These are infrastructures which are running probably into billions of rupees or dollars, and these spends cannot be done by an industry or a company, and it has to be a kind of conglomerate of companies or government funded. There, I think there is a lot of work needs to be done. Okay. While we have moved and traveled quite a distance in the last 10 or 15 years, what is more important is what do we do with this infrastructure? That's the next big $1 million question, which we as a society and a country will have to answer. That, yes, I have a nice infrastructure, but what do I do with it? If you look at it, you would see, if you look at these publications or any of these research institutes or papers presented, they are largely, kind of testing data, or, they just show the basic as to what is what, kind of explaining the concept. hardly there is any in-depth analysis or research or intellectual knowledge which is churned out of the work which is being done. So when you look around at a very apex level, when you look at all what you are seeing, I get a message that yes, there is impetus to spend a lot of money on R&D infrastructure, and the real research has to begin.
Yeah.
So that is where I see the current status on infrastructure and the work being done on the infrastructure.
Thank you. Thank you. One question will be later on to you from me is that because these investments essentially are long-term investments, we don't reap the fruits in the near future, and that is why Indian industry might have to change the psyche to invest in long-term benefits and try to develop technology on their own. Now, okay, thank you very much. I move.
100% agree.
Yeah.
Yeah, someone was making some comment.
Yes. Okay. So I move on to Dr. Usha, madam, and madam, your comments in healthcare industry that there are many initiatives by governments, from government side, I can say, Make in India and Start in India, Digital India. So how do we relate with them, and what is our position in really taking the benefits of this, and how are we moving ahead in R&D sector, please? I think, madam, you have to unmute yourself.
No. Yes?
Yes, now we can hear you.
Okay. Yeah. So if we really see, for instance, R&D, in across the sector, when we talk about hardcore research, the costs are going to be high. And then risks and failures are also going to be high. That means, we have to invest a lot, whether in infrastructure and various other aspects. And then, the gestation period is very long. So therefore, what happens is there's going to be, if we have a lot of private sector, say in healthcare, for example, it is one is that it's fragmented, but a lot of the healthcare provisioning that also happens through private healthcare. And therefore, a lot of the things that happens on research, other than pharma, which if we really look at, it really becomes a challenging for them to really invest. There could be small players, there could be a lot of things that are happening within their own environments, and therefore it really becomes a problem. And if you see, the product life cycle now is also fast changing. Technology is changing so fast. So, to be kind of reinvesting or shorter product life cycle, and if we see in terms of say, for example, if we see the IPR itself, the intellectual property right, whether it is in terms of filing, cumbersome processes. So I would like to quote here what Mashelkar, former CSIR, Director General said. We should focus on filing patents before publishing papers.
Oh.
And when we do research, we must be able to recognize that the knowledge can be monetized. So there is always for researchers in the university setup, it is publication versus or patenting and so on. And I'm very glad I was, part of BITS Pilani, when we moved ahead with, the entrepreneurship, movement. And we were a part of Vadwani Foundation, the NEN, and also skill development and so on. So the universities also geared up a little differently. So there is definitely, push from across the sector, from the governments, to really focus on R&D for universities.
Yeah.
And of course, it continues to be quite fragmented. So that is where probably, in terms of the infrastructure, in terms of the funds that we have, in terms of, what interdisciplinary thing that, Dr. Srinath was saying, and also the mindset. We kind of, in our education system, we moved into very strongly into rote learning and,
Yeah.
from early on. Yes. So what happened is we kind of lost that, set of people who probably, came up with finding, doing whatever that is normal, not what is, unusual or something that you want to find out. So R&D requires a lot of a different mindset to
Yes.
really put themselves into.
Yes.
And so I think, I mean, that doesn't mean that we have lost a lot, but at the same time, I think we have to really, kind of do a lot of repurposing from school age education to how we really look at, finding solutions to the problems that we have. Across, we talked about, you know, like say social problems that we have, the needs we have, whether it is in healthcare and so on. So therefore, we have had some very good things that have happened in India. Say, for example, if we look at how eye care is provided to masses, so we have the best examples of innovations, whether it is Arvind Eye or LV Prasad, Shankara
Yes.
Eye. So, or, making it, more possible, even within the, kind of limitations that we have had.
Yeah.
So we have that focus. We can definitely, in terms of moving ahead. And of course, if you look at again the engineering and multi, sectoral people who have to come to a, platform where we have to do, and rightly said by Sivaramakrishnan ji, that the interdisciplinary interactions. Research comes by talking about freely interacting, and not in silos. So that kind of, so engineering colleges are doing their things, the healthcare may be doing their things, and so on. But there is a lot more interactions that have to happen.
Yes.
Whether it is in terms of university and industry. And, right now, yes, this has to really get a lot more push. In terms of Make in India and others, I think we have had a good push, whether it is in terms of the change of mind, wanting to really do it. Sometimes I think we did very well when the other countries didn't give us technology transfer, we kind of did. So we saw what happened with, space research, for example. I think we're the best examples we have in space research. So, right now, COVID, another, I don't think we want COVID, but, it was a very great opportunity, so to say, that we all started saying, yes, we have to do it for ourselves. And, so I think, these, dependencies and interdependencies will continue, but I think Make in India also as a energizing movement, I think is very important, because I don't think, we can expect, some other countries to come and solve our problems. So we probably have to really, really work on that area in R&D. I mean, it could be small ones. And having said that, we also have done a lot of incremental kinds of things. Say research, we may not be very popular for disruptive kinds of, whether it was technology, whether it was, whatever magna. But I think in terms of social entrepreneurship within our own situations, we have done quite, small things to improve our lives, whether it is healthcare kinds of things. So sometimes we call it jugaad, but I think we have had, R&D, which are, which has made it affordable. Maybe it has made it localized, but then of course it can't go for scaling. It can't go for, commercialization. Those are, continue to be the challenge. And I think, the spend itself is less on, R&D.
Yes.
If you really see, for example, whether it is China or US or Japan and other countries, spending 2.6% of our GDP is quite low. But there are a lot of opportunities for FDIs. We are also talking about R&D centers being established. Where healthcare, again, R&D centers are established. Whether they go back to their companies and multinationals, or whether they say stay with us for utilization. But looking at our markets, I think we have a very attractive proposition, and so I think that's a very important part for us to really move ahead. I mean, so we have many small hurdles, in terms of our lives. When do we really do high-end research and others is when we have, ability to solve, different problems differently. But all of us get, kind of mixed up with our daily living itself, which becomes a little complicated. We have less time for, in terms of really focusing on that. So, in terms of how lifestyles, people's social lives, lifestyles, and what happens at R&D is all kind of into one, but I think we could really move ahead. I think we have that intellectual capacity. I think that has been the greatest advantage for us. And if we, focus and have overall view on doing, again, the research has to be a little bit more focused on whether it is like right now we see startups and others where we see that they are again fragmented. So there has to be a little bit more focused way as to, at least to certain extents. So clusters of that would help.
Yeah. Okay. Madam, you have really touched so many issues in R&D development in India. It has been really wonderful. Your entire, I will not say comment or a single few comments, but you have opened a big door to all of us here. And as you say, that this research culture has to be built up, and sporadic experiments have to be channelized. And can you tell us how the industry academia partnership should be scaffolding the students or the next generations, so that their psyche is towards R&D, and they should find it attractive and interesting to enter into. So do you have any comments about this industry academia partnerships?
Yeah, it has been, I mean, it's nothing new that I'm saying now. I think across the world, industries have taken a role, like if you see US and others, where they have mobilized and gone back to the departments, or like university departments, maybe opened up chairs there, have actual work that they need to do. Students can do it, and further, they groom them, and that's happening also in India in smaller ways now. And it definitely has to pick up, I mean, pace. I think this is where there is a lot of practical aspects that the students have to learn. Somewhere I'm sure all of us have learned that as we opened engineering college after engineering college, we also learned that, in a study, for example, in 2015, they found 80% are unemployable. I mean, I think the youngsters are intelligent. There's nothing, less in intelligence for any one of us. But I think how it is channeled. But if the college or the university, as well as the industry, is able to reach out and then have those specific things that they want for the industry to be done, and I'm sure the students will be able to really do it. So kind of making it more formal structures, actually working with the students in the university, and that would help. Again, in whether it is in healthcare, or pharmacy or medical device. These departments, we have so many medical colleges, so many pharmaceutical, colleges. Again, there is an opportunity for that also to happen.
Yes.
And I think if and industries are looking for nowadays, I mean, they are definitely reaching out. And one advantage we have is earlier we were limited by geographies,
Yeah.
to involve students, to monitor students, and or to get the work and outputs, or even calling the students for a presentation. Now with these technologies, and we have zoomed with Zoom, so
With Zoom, yeah.
I think yes. So I think the technology and internet and the access would also make the kind of limitation we had about geographies. Say if a university was there in a remote place, maybe they could not really participate. The industry was not interested in going to them. But
Yes.
now I think there's a possibility. So I think these two things in looking for those opportunities, and many universities have come up, new universities have come up, and the mandate also is for them to have very active R&D departments. And so this push will also really, the UGC guidelines for ensuring these kinds of R&D work.
Yes.
Then if the industry collaborations, everybody now understands. So,
Yes.
the industry collaboration need not be now limited to here and within India, but we also have across the world that could also happen. So with technology advancements, I think that could happen.
Yeah. Thank you so much. Yeah. I move on to Dr. Srinath now. And I think he has got a wide experience of how this industry academia partnership works in Europe. And because I think he is educated in Germany, spent time in Germany. And now that at I Square IT, definitely with the invent of IT industry, how do we take this ahead, R&D initiatives? So floor is open to you, Dr. Srinath. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. So some very pertinent points made both by Dr. Usha and Dr. Sivaramakrishnan, and maybe I can connect some of my ideas to what were mentioned. See, world over, one dichotomy we keep seeing is, there seems to be an assumption that corporate interests and public interests are not aligned, or governmental interests, and so that brings us the classical, capitalism and communism problem and so on. But in India, we have actually taken some very innovative steps towards that. I think we were one of the first, or if not the only country, to have this concept called corporate social responsibility.
Yeah.
We're not saying that we're not trying to make a distinction or choosing between corporate and social interest. We're saying, okay, let us involve all of them. Let's involve all of them towards. So I think this is one example of how India can probably lead the world in terms of innovative techniques, where rather than going into a particular camp, we actually bring different camps together. And as you rightly said, ma'am, I had been involved in some consortium projects with Europe and US, and also in India. And I could see a lot of very characteristic differences. For example, European Commission projects, EU projects. So they insist on collaborative approaches. So we need to have at least 7 institutions participating in a project and so on. While whereas funding or bidding for projects in the US is very different. You can bid alone and you can kind of make a proposal alone. So I see in India, for example, we have both. So there are some foundations which take single proposals, but some of them more recently, and I would say very encouragingly, it is looking at consortium building. And coming back to the CSR mechanism as well, I think that's a very good start, corporate social responsibility. But I think we need to kind of follow it up with a few more steps. So what has happened in the CSR ecosystem today is that industries are still somewhat unclear as to what kind of what kind of things to spend, where should they put their CSR funding on. And, so what is happening is in some way it is becoming a branding exercise. That is, so companies fund something and then they control how the fund works and so on. So, but one other thing that is kind of encouraging move that has happened in the last, I think, a year or so, is this concept called S&T clusters. That is, I think it's started from the central government, and there are so many initiatives for S&T clusters across different parts of the country. So in Bangalore, we have something called BEST, Bengaluru Science and Technology Cluster. So the idea here is to bring together different institutions and identify a set of subject areas where which need research and so on, and then try and generate funding around that. And coming from let us say so one of the clusters that I had been involved in concerns mobility. And so here again, I was like Dr. Usha was mentioning how things are, at least thus far, have been happening in silo. For example, the automotive industry and the railway industry or something else are kind of competing for the same pie, right? Competing for the same amount of grants and so on, which is what happened in the US. For example, the automotive lobby kind of won over the railway lobby and so on. But then here, what we're trying to say is, see, the problem we're addressing is not automobile or railway; it's about mobility. Right? And mobility involves everything. Mobility involves railways, it involves automotives, it involves buses, and because the problem, because all of them are addressing different aspects of the problem, right? And you cannot use scooters for long distance travel, but you can you can use cars, but then there are you can't do it in scale and so on. So once we build a cluster like this. And then that becomes the focus of CSR investment, I would say. I won't even call CSR as a charity or donation and so on. I would say it's an investment in the future. So when corporates kind of invest in a subject area, that's also of relevance to them. For example, if the automotive industry invests in mobility research, interdisciplinary cluster building and mobility research and so on, I think that would be the next step ahead, to really foster ecosystems that can bring together academia, industry, governments, and even non-governmental agencies together. Yeah, I mean, that would be primarily the point I'd like to make.
So thank you so much for your views. And this is very important comment that CSR can play a very good role, and formation of clusters and coming together and building this multidisciplinary culture and multi-institutional collaboration will really take us ahead. So at present, what is your take on the present R&D infrastructure, present status in India, and what are the firm steps a private industry can take to go ahead?
Yeah, of course, so there are there are lots of gaps in the present R&D, but having been in this space for about 20 years now, I think it's very, very encouraging. At least at the start of the century, like 2000, 2001, speaking from the IT industry, at least, IT industry was looking at very low-hanging fruits. They were just looking at building call centers or outsourcing jobs, and they were not looking at they're not willing to build their own products, build their own technology, and so on. But today we see a very vibrant ecosystem in the IT industry. There's a huge, vibrant startup ecosystem. There are very big advancements in 4G and 5G infrastructures.
Yes.
And major advancements in open data management, privacy, and so on. So there's a growing realization of the need for R&D even among private players. But of course, there are lots of challenges. One is the global competitive space that so we don't want to miss out on on the global technological race, and but at the same time there are also social issues that need addressing. So there is this constant tension between the two. So we may not need high-end technology for addressing many of our problems, but then many of our issues, if we address them, we may miss out on the race and so on, right? And so, so there is this constant tension, which I kind of see among a lot of IT industry pioneers. But I think the formation of clusters, formation of interdisciplinary approaches might actually bridge this gap.
Yes. See, the government, central government is trying their best to build the IT infrastructure in India. And that is a very, that is a huge task, looking at the diversity and the reachability and the vast differences, economic as well as geographical, in our country. But once the IT infrastructure is built, will it really going to help? Will it really help in our R&D to in a great push? Will it give?
Yeah. In fact, I would say so. Yes, because if we see, especially following COVID and so on, a lot of industries have almost permanently changed the way they're working, and the foremost among them is the IT industry. And working from home has become, earlier it was kind of seen from a negative way, but now people are seeing advantages to this. But it's not just working from home. What it's also doing is that it's decongesting our cities. So we are having, I know a lot of examples where people applying for IT industries, they say, if can I stay at my hometown and work on this project, and I can take a cut in my salary also if required. And so people are willing to do that. And what this does is that one, it decongests the massive pressure we are having on our infrastructure, and second, people get to address their own local issues. They're firmly rooted in where they're living, so they're not far away from their issues and so on. While at the same time they have a source of income, they're also connected to the larger global network that happens. So so definitely yes, I would say.
Global village concept, I can say that.
Exactly.
The society has really
acting local. And,
yes. I will go back to our first speaker, Sri Sivaramakrishnan, and I have a question for you, that public-private partnership will help our R&D to grow at a different pace or at a faster pace. What is your take on this?
Very pertinent question. So as I said, much of the R&D spent by private, when it comes to large R&D spends, it is just not possible for a corporate or for a small unit to scale the R&D infrastructure, and a public partnership is very much in need. Having said that, I would kind of start this R&D partnership at a grassroots level. Usha ma'am was saying that about 1.2 million engineers, ma'am, that if that number was right, graduate every year.
Yeah.
But if you really look at how many PhDs graduate, every year in India, it's a very, very small number. So an UGC paper said the number in 2017 at least stood at something like 35,000 PhDs graduating, and the enrollment is as small as 1.6 lakh enrollments, which has grown significantly from in the last 5 years. It's more than doubled in terms of enrollment, and the graduation is more than 50%. However, for a country like India of about 1.2 billion people, the number of people inclined or trained to do research is as such a small number. So the first step, if at all the public, money has to be spent, the government money has to be spent, is to get this number really, really accelerating and going up. that's kind of mission one, I would put it. The second most important thing is coming from the industry.
Yeah.
If you look around, you will find industry as a graduate engineering trainee recruitment program, right? I mean, every one of you would have gone through it, and most of the campuses would have been recruiting GETs. We must ask ourselves this question: how many corporates recruit PhDs? Or do they have a formal program of recruiting PhDs? So as a society, we look at, PhD students. Even at your home, if you ask someone, what are you doing? You're doing a PhD. What raises in your mind is probably he did not get a good corporate job when he graduated, and hence he landed up with his masters and PhDs. This is what rings in our mind. As a parent, even, everybody. So the need for driving every individual to have a research bent of mind, motivating them to pursue their passion is very, very important. And I think India has gone. I mean, so you'll have to take baby steps. The first step of unwinding and opening up so many institutions for basic education and bachelor's education, master's education is a good step forward. But I think a lot of work needs to be done in bringing the academia to a level where a lot of PhD students pass out, and the industry starts looking at them as the talent pool for their growth in terms of research and development. So this is one key message which I would like to leave. The second most important thing, so public-private partnerships. If you look at, so today we have a plethora of engineering colleges and management colleges and things like that. And if you closely study how much percentage of a professor or assistant professor or a lecturer's time is spent on research, it will be an abysmal low in terms of 10% or 5%. The reason why it is so is it is again all these private engineering colleges or private institutions have become a kind of a business model. Be sustainable. So the only way by which their revenues are kind of atoned is by the sheer virtue of number of students they have. So they look at each and every professor as a kind of a lecturer. How many hours do you kind of lecture, or how many hours do you kind of profess, is the only matrices or KPI which every college management or university management, I don't know who does that, but probably kind of run after. What is important is to make a paradigm shift in the way these resources are going to be nourished and utilized. And here there has to be probably a kind of a framework which promotes a significant proportion of their time in research. And here, public spending, there are we already have a very fair infrastructure in terms of central research laboratories. The CSIR research laboratories are there. Usha ma'am did talk about the island of excellence in terms of our technology in space. The ISRO centers and many private research institutes also. So, and Dr. Srinath also was talking about kind of conglomerates forming together using the CSR funds. So there has to be a very focused, like a Make in India program, which was instituted, and a focused team, trying to put together all these pieces of puzzles and giving the impetus and thrust for the next, growth in terms of manufacturing. We need to, the public funding has to be channelized through probably, Innovate in India kind of a program, which would bring together all these partners who has the deep desire in terms of contributing to the field of research and development for the country, but channelizing it in a way which yields the end result, what we all want. So these are a few thoughts which I had, which I thought I should share.
Thank you so much, sir. And your comments on mobilizing academia towards research is so valuable. So that, if that is the takeaway, at least some of the our viewers take today, that will be a big step towards developing research culture on university campuses and giving a big mobility to spreading research message amongst the students along with the faculty. Thank you so much. I think all the panelists have really uh, put in front of us 360 degrees view of developing. It was not only describing the present status, but how and what we can do, what are the steps one can take, how we can really reap the benefits of various government schemes, how the public private partnership, academia and private industry coming together. All these aspects were very well covered by all of them, and each one has put forth their perspective so effectively about R&D development. Time is so apt. The rate of change is at a peak at present, and with COVID pandemic, our minds are opened up various possibilities, and India can definitely take advantage of this situation, and a huge number of aspiring youth in this country can take this ahead. I will take the session back to our comparer, Pranima, and she can take it forward. Hello, Pranima?
Yes, ma'am. I hope you can hear me.
Yeah, thank you so much. Yeah.
Do we have time to take at least one question, since it's a very interesting question that has come up by Miss Anjali Kadtare?
Yeah, Purnima, please go ahead. Please take
Okay.
the question.
Yeah. I would like to redirect this to all our panelists. Maybe our esteemed guests can answer this question one by one. Miss Anjali asks that as per Sigmund Freud's theory, two forces work on people's behavior, that is eros and thanatos. So the imbalance in these forces leads to loss of peace and mental health. How can we maintain a perfect balance for creating happiness as far as R&D is concerned? And I think this is probably asked with an intention of having the blend of academia and industry. So if our esteemed panelists can answer this one by one, we may begin with Dr. Usha. Over to you, ma'am. Ma'am, you are on mute. Dr. Usha Manjunath. Could you kindly unmute your microphone? Okay, I think ma'am is facing some technical glitch. We may move on. Dr. Srinath Srinivasa. Over to you, sir.
Just yeah, I have a request. I think
Yes, ma'am.
we lost you in the if you can quickly again reiterate the question, I think that would help.
Sure, definitely, definitely, ma'am. The question reads as per Sigmund Freud's theory, two forces work on people's behavior, that is eros and thanatos. The imbalance in these forces leads to loss of peace and mental health. How can we maintain a perfect balance for creating happiness with regard to research and development in terms of academia and industry blend?
Okay, so can I take that and maybe then pass it on?
Yes, ma'am. Sure, definitely.
And because he brought in a very important part on trust and others.
Right.
So we are looking at the personal psyche at one level, and we are also looking at what's happening on the external world, where maybe sometimes we don't have a lot of control. Definitely, I mean, Freud's, viewpoint on, how we really balance also brings in a different approach to really look at our own mental peace or how we actually behave. So if we really see, internally, yes, we look at more from, internally as to what I want, or, it is a pleasure, or, I want whatever I want to, later to a very large extent on morality and how we really look at. I think the balance comes from the fact that how we are reared at home, and, which I don't think I have any major problems in the Indian scenario, where we really look at, that kind of a scenario where we do have a certain fair amount of, good morality that's being built up. But if we really, I would go a step ahead and not get stuck with only Freud, because I would also go ahead and see how that impacts the society overall. And, that is where I think, society always is trying to juggle with what is there. And of course, it is in terms of survival. And it does put a lot of pressure onto the individual psyche to perform in a particular fashion. So it does really, keep, doing that. As an individual, I mean, now I'm taking it to the next level, to R&D. Say, for example, where, like, rightly, Sivaramakrishnan was saying, like now we want jobs, and, the good people probably are not left for PhD at all. Now many of the colleges are struggling, where if we see that, say, for example, for MSc or MTech and, further to PhD, not many good students are left, because the society now puts a pressure onto the, which is natural. I mean, I can't say what the society should be really doing or not. I mean, for us on an economically very different level, it does come with a lot of strictures. So, how do we do this? I think we have to really see from early childhood development or schooling, for example, because childhood development has a natural course. So I think from an R&D perspective, where does this really reduce the conflict is if, the schools are now looking at STEM, science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. Now they're adding one more A to it, bring in the social concepts of liberal arts. So now it is not just STEM, but bring in STEAM. I mean, so I think if we start, because you have to strengthen a young child's or a mind who comes to, whether to college or wherever, that there is a, once the person becomes more confident, only then he can probably be able to balance. So there is the R&D part where, what is, very different, where you have to be innovatively thinking, you have to be really looking for solutions. And, but then society is probably looking at a little different this one, because we have to be commercially viable. The families has, certain very structured way of looking at, child's growth, or, you have to do it at this stage, get married, do this. And, you have to earn this much money. Society has those. Those also bring into our psyche and will definitely do that.
Thank you. I think,
youngsters.
yeah, ma'am has really answered well.
Yeah,
and
so there's a lot of hope.
Yeah. Thank you so much,
Yes.
ma'am. Yeah, with this hope, we move ahead, and we have a very optimistic view built up already through this session. So, Dr. Srinath and Mr. Sivaramakrishnan, over to you.
Yeah. So thank you. I think this is a very, very interesting question, and I would say very relevant as well. I mean, one of the things I keep arguing is why psychology is so important. In engineers and scientists, it's actually central, because what does the science is the mind, and if we don't understand the mind, what else can we understand? And so I would like to bring forth a parallel theory from the Upanishads, the Chandogya Upanishad and so on. So it talks about the self and the ego, which is somewhat like the the Thanos and the Eros. And it talks about how there are two golden birds sitting on a tree. One is the self, the other is the ego. And the ego kinds of wants to eat all the fruits and wants to experience life and do the latest thing. Is that it brings up this concept of invariance, right? That the self or the Thanos is basically the invariant, observant kind of energy, while the ego or the eros, it's kind of like it wants to experience, it wants to change, it wants to do the latest thing and so on. Now, how does it relate to research, right? And so even in research, we have these two forces acting. On the one hand is the ego, which wants to do the latest research like deep learning and AI and autonomous vehicles and SpaceX, Elon Musk, all kinds of. It wants the latest jargon, latest buzzword, and so on, right? And but then each of these hypes and jargons, keep coming and going and so on. Behind them, there is a constant. There's a constant with respect to the underlying concepts, the underlying philosophy, the underlying reasoning. Things like critical thinking or reasoning, logic. It has not changed from since recorded history. From 500 or 5,000 years ago, it's still the same, right? And we still use the same principles of reasoning, the same principles of conceptual modeling, and so on. So that is the self. That's the invariant part. So no matter how much we kind of go and want to look at the latest technology, we have to come back to the self, come back to the invariant. And once we have our minds rooted in what is invariant, I think the ego can be much more free, in terms of experience. So that's my perspective.
Thank you.
Very important analogy indeed. Thank you so much, Srinath, sir. Over to you, Mr. Sivaramakrishnan. Sir, if you could just unmute yourself.
Am I audible?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, definitely not a psychologist to answer this question, but my two pennies on this question is if you look at these two words, I would look at it as the positive emotion and the negative emotion. So like the life instinct and the death instinct, if you go by the literal meaning of these two words. And where it stems from is the fundamental deep desire of an individual to what he wants to be in life. And unfortunately, I'll go back to my earlier, commentary, where I said much of the Indian society forces our children to do what we wanted to do in life. We never allowed them to pursue their passion, which is changing. Definitely, it is changing. When I look around the new recruits in my company, talk to them, they most of them are rudderless and they really did not know what they wanted to be in life and what they have, why they are here, for example. Many of them, when you ask around, you find, while they may not answer this question, but you can find these answers in their faces. So, and that is coming from the fact that we are a society which has more or less controlled the minds of our children. And the first thing which we need to change probably is this very aspect that allow our children and allow the youngsters to follow their passion. So that is the ethos side of it, living life. So when you do that, then you automatically create an environment. So if you ask me, how do we do that? Probably I don't have an answer yet, but definitely I can say that, if you look around in the developed world, if you look around, if you talk to your relatives, if you talk to your friends in the US or in the developed economies, you always find that the children there choose what they want to do. In fact, the parents or the elders in the family don't have any Of course, there probably are a set of not so good things happening because of that. But nevertheless, the positive side of it is it definitely develops a positive feeling for that individual, living life the way he wants to live, and thus he chooses a profession which he likes to do, and he tries to excel there. And that, I would say, is the seed for an active research and development, and that is what we need to foster as a society.
Thank you so much. I think we have received very interesting views from all the panelists. I would request Mr. Praveen Patil to give his concluding remarks before we conclude this session.
Thanks, Purnima. Wonderful comparing Dr. Suhasini Desai. Thank you very much for your help and support. First of all, let me begin with thanking all the panelists who spend their valuable time in talking to our students, people, and the public at large. Your inputs have been taken very seriously. We've been taking note of whatever you spoke, and they will be forming a part of a larger plan. I'm sure you're aware that we've already visited. We've done the West, which includes Pune, Mumbai, and then we did Delhi, which included Delhi, NCR, Chandigarh, and a few other cities in the north. We are now in the south, where we're covering Chennai and Bangalore, two cities, and then we'll be going to the east, and that's how we will be creating a full report. So your inputs are very important, and they will form an opinion of a part of the region that you belong. I thank you sincerely, Dr. Srinath Srinivasa, Professor and Dean R&D, IIT Bangalore, for taking time out today. Spending time is the most valuable thing that we can do in our life, and you've done that in contributing to the well-being of our tomorrow, our future. Thank you so much. Dr. Usha Manjunath, Director, Institute of Health Management. Thank you so much, madam, for your time this morning to address the audience. Dr. Sivaramakrishnan Viswanathan, Chief Technology Officer at TVS Sri Chakra Limited. Thank you so much, sir, for being there. From my side, thanks to Madhvan also for having connected us to you. Your inputs were very, very valuable, very relevant, coming from the industry. So while we always have academic conclaves, a perspective from industry always helps us to help us look inside out, and from your point of view, outside in. So thanks so much for spending time today. On behalf of Indian Merchants Chamber and MIT World Peace University, I thank you all for spending your time. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, sir. And before we conclude this session, I would like to make an important announcement. The next session of today starts at 12 noon sharp. Please join us for session 2, which is on the theme, Will the National Education Policy 2020 be helpful in promoting research and development culture in India?
Wonderful.
Please stay tuned, and we start at 12 sharp. Thank you so much once again.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a good day.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.